to insist that this is an isolated incident.
Alpha team, this is Echo team. Level 1 is clear. Copy that, Echo. Proceed with caution.
Die Tafelmaniere Podcast. Verstandelike onafhanklikheid. Jy is nou ingeprop. Hallo en welkom by nog 'n episode van die Tafelmaniere Podcast. My naam is natuurlik Frederik. Hierdie episode van die Tafelmaniere Podcast is met trots geborg deur Tafelmaniere Designs. Begin jy 'n nuwe besigheid of dalk 'n nuwe projek? Of is dit tyd vir jou om jou reeds bestaande besigheid te rebrand? 'n Besigheid begin en eindig met 'n logo. Jou logo verteenwoordig vir jou en jou besigheid se filosofie in 'n visuele manier. Tafelmaniere Designs kan dit vir jou ontwerp met 'n vinnige tempo en teen 'n bekostigbare prys. Pakketpryse begin by so min as R750. So kontak ons vandag op alle sosiale media kanale of stuur vir ons 'n e-pos na info@tafelmaniere.com. Dis info@tafelmaniere.com vir 'n gratis konsultasie. My gaste vandag is Dean en Andrew van Marijuana SA. So, wat is Marijuana SA? Dit is 'n online cannabis en marijuana grower shop. Alles vanaf saadjies, groeiligte, groeitente, grond, alles wat jy nodig het om jou eie cannabis groeiopsie te begin. Of eerder groeioperasie te begin. En, die ding daarvan is, dis online. Enigiets wat jy bestel word by jou huis afgelewer. Hulle het ook 'n podcast genaamd Marijuana SA Weekly, wat elke Vrydag op YouTube beskikbaar is, en hulle gesels oor alles in die marijuana-industrie, die stand van sake, die proses van om die gebruik en die verkoop van marijuana wettig te maak in Suid-Afrika, en hierdie is my 'n baie spesiale episode. Die gebruik van cannabis in my eie lewe het my lewe totaal nou verander, vanaf beter slaap, die vermindering van die inflammasie in my lyf, na net 'n algehele beter gemoedstoestand, wat my toelaat om beter te werk en om aan 'n beter mens te wees. Marijuana was nog altyd deel van die mens se storie en dit is tyd dat dit weer voluit terugkom. Lande soos Amerika en Kanada het dit reeds wettig gemaak en dit het 'n groot impak op die land gehad in terme van ekonomie, finansies, landbou en die beter wees van die mensdom. En ek glo dit kan ook goed wees vir ons land Suid-Afrika. So probeer asseblief om na hierdie episode met 'n oop kop te luister. En geniet die episode. So hierso is Dean en Andrew van Marijuana SA. Totsiens. Three, two, one. Hallo guys, so dis welkom by die Tafelmaniere Podcast. Sorry, ek moet nou terug gaan Afrikaans toe. Hierdie is 'n Afrikaanse podcast. En dames en here, julle sal nie glo nie, maar vandag het ons eerste Engelse gaste. Dit is Dean en Andrew van Marijuana SA. Dit is 'n mond vol klaar. En ja, dit is vir my 'n groot voorreg om hierdie manne op te hê. En op baie noot gaan ek nou oorskuif Engels toe, want hulle is deel van die Engelse garde. Hulle verstaan Afrikaans, maar hulle kan nie so mooi Afrikaans praat nie. Dis okay. Ek is een van die gelukkige Afrikaners wat geleer het hoe om Engels te praat toe ek op universiteit was. So I can speak the lekker English, bro. And if you just
no pressure on our no pressure on our side being the first English guest, but I hope it's going to be
yeah.
I'm really looking forward to it.
It's funny, eh? It's funny that you think there's pressure. It's as if there's this cultural divide between Afrikaners and English people.
No, it's just a language barrier.
Yeah, I think the pressure.
I don't want to be embarrassed.
I thought more on my side just to do well and to bring good content, you know. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to the show.
100%, guys. But thank you for making time out of your busy schedules. You guys are doing very important work that the rest of us are either not informed yet to do, or uneducated, or just don't have the capacity to do it yet. So thank you guys for coming on to the podcast. You guys are obviously, it's Dean van Skalkwyk and Andrew Forte from Marijuana SA. And to put it, if I can summarize what you guys do, and you must please correct me afterwards, is that you guys are, in my opinion, some of the leaders in the progressing marijuana industry at the moment, or I would rather say the cannabis industry, mostly in terms of growing, in terms of education for the marijuana industry and for marijuana usage, obviously. And if you can just maybe correct me or even help me out what you guys do exactly. And you guys,
our main business is we operate and run a grow store, which is basically like I always like to explain it to people as a specialized gardening shop. We basically sell everything you'd find in a gardening shop, a little bit more pivoted towards cannabis as the focal point, or marijuana as is in the name. And we do sort of lots of indoor growing, lots of outdoor growing. We run a blog as well on the website, which is quite informative, lots of really cool articles. And then on the other side, we operate a lot of media, which Andy sort of leads a little bit more.
The media side's a big part of the business, and it's always been something that we've wanted to do from day one, is set out and actually give back some of the content and sort of, you know, create a culture around cannabis and slightly sway it from maybe what the industry thinks of cannabis at the moment, or less so these days, but there's still some misinformation out there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, seeing this is an Afrikaans podcast, like my listeners know, I've hinted a few times that I do smoke marijuana now and then, whatever that means to them. Some calls it, some says that I smoke Zol, I'm a boomkop. There's a lot of stigmatization around the use of cannabis. Let's say that this is a radio program with Rian Kruiwagen, that's the head of it, and he wants you to explain to the older people and to the kids exactly what marijuana is and what the usage of cannabis is. What would you guys say? What would you say to that?
Take it away, Dean.
I would say that it's something that's been in a negative light for a long time, but it's basically a plant which grows in nearly every single country around the world. It's proven to have a multitude of different medicinal benefits, which has been suppressed for a long time. But there's legal markets overseas, like America, Canada, where the proper scientific research has been done, and the truth about, you know, the medicinal benefits has started to come through. And it's also a product that can be used medicinally, but the side effects are often very fun. So it's often used recreationally as well for the side effects, which include, you know, an improvement of sort of your taste buds, so everything tastes a little bit better, you eat a lot more, everything seems a little bit more funny, a little bit more exciting. So it can be used for a very broad range of things, and it can obviously be abused like anything else, but under the correct circumstances, and if you have access to the right knowledge, which is a lot of what we try to provide, then it
Yeah.
can be used very responsibly, and even more responsibly than alcohol
Yes.
in most cases.
Yes.
You know, it's proven to be the drug with the least deaths around the world, next to naught. So yeah, it's a new industry in South Africa that's being born, but it's been a part of South African culture for a long time as well, especially in the African culture. So it's something that's used, you know, in by nearly every different kind of person, and it's something very exciting as well. And I mean, we promote cultivation for yourself in your own space. So something you can produce yourself and enjoy. And there's nothing more rewarding than being able to go from the process, from the beginning, planting the seed, to in the end enjoying this product which you've grown yourself. And for me, it's an absolute passion, and for Andy as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Is that it? You just agree?
No, I said I agree. Sorry, it like glitched out for a second. I was busy taking a screenshot for the social medias later.
Okay.
And it like froze everything.
And on top of that, I mean, it's been proven we obviously operate full time in the space, and it's a massive industry that is going to be. I think South Africa will be a leader of very, very soon. We're an agricultural powerhouse, we're a tourism powerhouse, and both of those are massive sides of the industry as well. And like I said, no one does it better than South Africans. So I can't wait to see large scale farming operations taking place and all of the job creation around that, because like I said, I think we can do it better than any country around the world, and that's yet to be seen. Yeah.
Well, like I always, so I'm not your typical in Afrikaans that you say your boomkop. That the stigmatization on school is always jy die boomkoppe gehad daai kant wat hulle rook in die middag, rook hulle dagga en dan gaan slaap hulle vroeër as die res van ons wat huiswerk doen. Dis kom ons slim is. Dagga maak jy natuurlik dom. Jy kan nie dagga rook nie, wat gaan jy dom maak? and the general education still, I think, in the Afrikaans community specifically is very, very, very low in terms of cannabis use. And I haven't been using it for a long time, but since I have been using it, I think it would be since really started using it the beginning of last year, which is 2019. It has really changed my life in medicinal ways. So I've been a guy that I've had sleep problems most of my life. Like serious, almost, let's say, insomnia. And the moment that I just started using nighttime cannabis and smoking it, and that's the first step of how great it is. My sleep pattern has improved by hundreds of percentages, and my training regimen is better, my diet is better, my overall well-being is better. I'm not someone that can use it during the daytime or when I work, because I get way too relaxed and I lose my edge. I need a bit of an edge for motivation to be able to work. But otherwise, to be able to shut down after a day's work and smoke marijuana, and like me and my girlfriend used to she used to make jokes of me of when I used it, that I'll watch a Disney movie and point out all the weird things that goes on in Disney movies. And then I would tell my grand the story, because my granny, she's quite old, and she's someone that's receptible to any type of story these days. And I would tell her, ek het dagga gerook en toe ek Snow White gekyk. En toe sê sy, hoe het jy gevoel daaroor? Sê ek, wel, ouma, ek het uitgevind dat dit is gaan oor 'n meisie wat in die woud rondhardloop saam met 7 dwergies wat en sy praat met diere. Sy sê, then she said, my goodness, I never even thought that was possible. Why didn't I see it in the first place? Just because of smoking a little joint, I saw that this movie isn't as innocent as we think. But otherwise, in terms of the way that it really alleviated my stress, my inflammation, that's a big part is I saw a rapid decline in inflammation. I'm a guy that I would get flu 3 times a year. and I haven't had flu yet since the beginning of
Yeah.
last year. And
It's that stress edge that it's taken away.
exactly.
You know, like that being able to like rest at the end of the day and like switch off. Because, you know, as yourself, you know, doing a podcast takes like, you need to consume information all the time. You need to be on the trigger. You need to be active. I mean, this is, you know, it's after hours now, and, you know, and you're still there behind the mic, been doing research, and just to be able to, at the end of the day, switch off, clear your head, and just relax. And I think that leads to a lot of the stress reduction, which leads to the amazing health benefits that so many people, you know, receive. I fully agree.
Besides doing the podcast, I also started doing graphic design. I'm self-taught, and I'm a logo designer by trade at the moment. I do logos for people, and the the immense value that brings to revise your work, to say if this is creative enough in a sense, if it's accurate enough by just using marijuana at the end of the day and looking at a logo, because a logo is a visual representation of the philosophy of a business. And it has opened doors to me that I never knew existed. And I wish that I knew about it in school. Like,
it allows sometimes to just give you like a nice quick second percent. You know, you've been looking at something one way the whole day, and it can just change your perspective just in that slight enough way to make you question something which you maybe didn't think from before, and open up a whole new thought pattern. You know, it's very, very beneficial in the creative space. And I often also, when I'm struggling with creative stuff, will take maybe consume some cannabis and then relook at it in a different way to see, and it's also been extremely beneficial for me as well.
Yes. And so on that note, how do you guys think, except for the practice of good education, how can we help people to understand the benefits, not just medicinal but overall holistic benefits that the use of cannabis is? Because the one thing that I've noticed is that the moment that you say you use cannabis, they say that you smoke, and they associate smoking cannabis with smoking cigarettes. They say it's the exact same thing. It has to give you the exact amount of lung cancer as cigarettes.
Yeah, I was thinking about something you said earlier, which kind of really struck me, and I was just imagining you telling your grandma that you smoke dacha. And I'm just thinking, like, I mean, that in itself, I mean, dude, that's brave. I know a lot of guys listening to this show aren't going to be able to relate to that, and will never ever do that. A lot of people, that stigma or that brainwashing that was going down in their day is just too intertwined in their being, and that's led to the stigma that we're facing now. But anyway, to get to the question that you were asking with you know, sort of how to change the stigma and all of that approach to it. And I think one of them is not doing it sort of like not making it a closet habit where you hide it from your wife and your kids and on your family. You have to approach this with honesty. You have to approach it with it's not just you know, it shouldn't be this. Don't treat it as your own dirty habit. And some people have that perception, but they still do it because they know it's good for them. Like, can you imagine being in that conundrum? They think it's the devil's reefer, but then they can sleep 12 hours at night because of it. So there's so I think the main thing is treat it with honesty, and then don't create the stigma as yourself. You know, if I mean, you can't tell people not to. You know, if you smoke responsibly. That's the main thing, because it's the people that are in the positions that they can sway the influence of, you know, entire companies. I mean, our company functions great, but it's because everyone smokes responsibly. There's a time and a place for everything, and if you know what your job is, like you said, you know, you maybe can't function so well in the day. You've been down there. Some people can, but that leads to to creating that stigma, and you just don't want to be sort of perceived as, there's that guy, he's late for work, he's not wearing his t-shirt, shoes are off, and he's different. And that,
Does that happen in your office? That has happened in your office quite often.
On those occasions.
No, I'm joking. No, look, like I often explain to people, like, or to my friends that they respect what I do, but they don't want to do it because they're still too afraid to do it. I say, you know that there's going to come a time that, like, marijuana has been decriminalized, which means you can use it for recreational purposes in the privatization of your own home. And there's going to come a time that you going to have the sportsman's warehouse, and next to it the disc game, and next to it the marijuana dispensary. And housewives with Toyota Fortuners are going to drop the kids off at school. They're going to stop at the dispensary to get their marijuana, and they stop at Woolies to get the chicken for tonight. Go pick up the kids when they're done with yoga class, go back, and it's just going to be a part of life. You're not going to be able to stop it because it's already happened in a lot of countries, most of America at the moment. And people struggle with that. They still think, like I spoke to Andrew on the phone, and I said that people think that smoking weed is like smoking tuck or cigarettes. It's not the same thing. It's not it's not, how can if I can word it properly, it's not the same chemical type of drug as that is. Or it's not even a drug. It doesn't come in the pharmaceutical company doesn't make it. Especially if you're a Christian, you must say that, well, God grows that, gave it to us in the earth. It's grown out of the earth, the same as a potato. Why would you not use it?
It's like coffee, it should be in the same category, schedule coffee, not schedule 7, in the same category as like tuck and heroin. Like it's and you're not going to consume it like cigarettes. I mean, people smoke 20, 40 cigarettes a day. Like if you smoke 20, 40 joints a day, you'll be on your phone. You're going to be. If
you smoke 20 joints a day, you'll see the heavens open, and that's what God looks like.
You'll be so fun.
And it's the same. Like people aren't going to do 20 coffees a day, but they're not going to have 20 coffees a day because they know it's going to ruin their day.
Exactly.
And people are responsible with coffee. You don't see people abusing it and injecting the marijuana or whatever, injecting caffeine. So it's the whole thing about it is quite messed up. But I think you're right. It's going that way. Yeah. It's 100% going that way. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how they change when they see, it's just, there's disc game, then Mr. Price, and then your dispensary. Yeah. And just like a Tops. I think that's going to change it for a lot of people. That'll be the turning point.
Yeah. Yeah. So on that note, what would you guys say is the status at the moment? You guys probably have some inside information on what the legal process is being followed, and what, like the burger isn't going to tell us every day this is the current status. What did you guys what information can you give us on where we are at the moment?
So we are obviously, since September 2018, the South Africa has been operating under a decriminalized, cannabis has been decriminalized, meaning you can still get arrested for it for certain reasons, but the judge prescribed, it was sort of all built around the privacy judgment, as you know, this is quite commonly known news. So now cannabis, as you said, can be used and cultivated for private, in your own private space for private consumption. So you can grow your own weed and consume your own weed in privacy, and it's relatively open to interpretation. In it's still not sort of laid out fully. There was a 2 years that was prescribed for sort of legislation to be put into place. And since then, there's been some movements, but very minimal movements around new legislation. There was just a descheduling of CBD quite recently and sort of some information around that. But as it remains now, in order to consume cannabis legally, you sort of have to cultivate it and or use it in your own home, and not cultivate more than you would be able to consume. So you can't cultivate in excess, you know. You sort of have to keep it as minimal as possible, but as much as you physically can consume. So it's still very open to interpretation, and for us in the industry, it's you know, you sort of have to, the law is changing consistently, so we have to stay on the ground and always at the front line, and it sort of comes back to us having to be professional in the space and to abide by the law, because we're sort of in the pioneer phase of this industry, and if we're going to abuse it, we're not going to get the industry that we all want, and that would be very beneficial to South Africa. We're in sort of a very open phase, but there is an industry that's flourished around it and continues to flourish.
Yeah, that's an excellent point with that Dean made with regards to how the people in the cannabis industry are handling it now is laying down the direction that it's going to go. Luckily, the movement is looking good. People have taken it and they've been fairly responsible with the leniencies that have been given. You know, they gave us a hand. We haven't taken the whole arm yet. There have been obviously abusers of the system, but I feel confident that we're creating a good industry going forward, and I think that's the only way we're going to get there. And it's luckily, I mean, South Africa is known to exploit certain industries, but I think cannabis has kept it pretty well in line to where we're going. And I think everyone sees, you know, everyone wants the same future. They want a complete delegalization. It should be just like coffee. If you want to buy it, you know, it should be regulated. You should know what you're getting. You shouldn't smoke weed that's got pesticides and funguses and molds on it. You know, there should be basic conditions. It shouldn't be ISO standards and stuff like that it makes it too difficult for, you know, anyone to do. But yeah, I think we'll get there. And I think the guys like the Dacha couple in the Fields of Green for All, they really are. They're doing such a phenomenal job for pushing this industry, and we follow sort of in their steed, and we're also trying to push for that same outcome, hopefully.
And sorry, Dean.
I was just going to say, that's exactly what I wanted to say off that point. There's very well-respected activists in the South African landscape, and a lot of the industry is fully behind them. They're looking for an inclusive industry, and we're lucky to have such a powerful force in the activism front, and I hope that more people who are interested to go and check them out, the Fields of Green for All, because they're the people who have got us to where we are today. It's a non-profit organization, and they're actually busy looking for signatures now. So if you're interested or you're passionate, it's something that you as an individual can do your little bit towards an industry that, like I said, we're very passionate about, could help thousands and millions of people, you know.
And what do you guys think? I've heard, obviously, President Cyril Ramaphosa, he spoke about the potential agricultural revolution that it can have if marijuana if we are able to farm it. I heard some people say it's almost a 70 billion rand industry that we can just with exports, not even touching job creation, because it's such a labor intensive sector. Part of agriculture. You can't just get, jy kan nie 'n stroper kry om to farm marijuana fields. You need people to physically work the acres of lands. What would you guys say?
It's an extremely high value crop. That's something that South Africa, I don't even think, is even fully contemplated yet. You know, the home growers and whatnot know, you know, what those that have been buying weed, they know what it's like just to, you know, now you grow your own as you're allowed by law. and they know what they're saving. But I don't think the big farmers have clicked that if you only have 1 acre of land and you want to maximize the amount of return you're getting from that 1 acre of land, like, you know, you could say you can maybe grow, there's going to be some guys on your show that definitely know better than I do, but say you grow like a ton of tomatoes on on an acre of land or whatever.
Yeah.
And like that'll sell for like, you know, 100,000 rand. But weed for, you know, for the same amount of space is so incredibly high value. And that leads to it. That's where the money's coming from in the industry. And the demand to match that is so high. Like everyone wants to consume it and they're willing to pay these exorbitant prices, even in the States where it's been unregulated, decriminalized and legalized for recreational purposes under medical supervision. There's been a slight price decrease, but they've still managed to keep the prices at a point where it's sustainable to farm. And if South Africa has done that with our cheap, affordable labor prices, our land, our sun, our weather climates, I think it's definitely going to be a $70 billion dollar industry. I fully believe that. Maybe probably rand.
And we also already in the illegal industry are the 3rd largest exporter of cannabis in the world. So there's already this massive industry that's being, you know, that is in South Africa and has been here for a very long time. And it just shows to the potential of our specific climate to cultivate high grade export quality product for cheaper prices, because we have some of the best sort of growing climate in the world for cannabis. And I think large scale greenhouse operations are going to completely, you know, blow up, because we'll have some of the highest quality cannabis in the world, and we'd be able to export it on a large scale. And like Andy said, we sort of, all the criteria are fitted for us to put a world-class product out that can come in at a far cheaper price.
Yeah. And also to
be sustainable.
Yeah. And it's not just, if the government plays their cards right, it's not just going to be a big corporate farmer, you know, that's getting all the money. It can still be, this can be a community harvest. This can be something that every guy, if you have a garden, or if you have a 5 square meters of land in your garden, that all contributes to this valuable industry. That's small, you know, instead of maybe harvesting chickens for their eggs, you know, to make a little bit extra cash, they can put like grow 5 daggabomen, and 3 months, 6 months later, they've got, you know, 10,000-15,000 rand that they've, you know, that they would be able to add to their economy. Their, you know, local, right where they, you know, their neighbors, their friends around them. And it's, you know, instead of them all buying black label quartz, they're buying, you know, Swazi or something from their, you know, friends. The money's staying in the community. They're growing together. So I you know, we've always pushed for the industry to go that way, the inclusivity and the fact that it could be someone's in South Africa. And we all know in South Africa how desperate some people are, and this could just be one easy thing to give to people, that the government could give to people. That could be a way out for a lot of people. A lot of people will instantly get relief and an opportunity. So yeah, I feel strongly that it's a valuable industry, not just in terms of money, but in terms of how it will change people's lives.
Yeah. Now I've spoken to guys that are farmers, and they are waiting for the trigger just to be pulled, because they've already done their math. They know exactly what's coming, and they say when it comes, it's going to change. It's going to change the country. It's going to, in terms of agriculture, it's going to change everything, because it's not, in terms of the way that they have to farm it, it's way cheaper. It's not that difficult. We obviously have naturally rich soils, but if you can just, the type of compost that they can produce, for bigger yields for bigger strains in tunnel farming, for example, or just basic hydroponic systems that they use for tomatoes, for example. is
Yeah.
is literally tailor-made for cannabis.
Yeah,
And,
because cannabis uses nearly the same nutrient schedule that tomato does. So a lot of the time when you're looking for an indicator of, what nutrient is going to be good for my cannabis, a lot of the time it comes down to tomato farming nutrients. So those large hydroponic facilities, the tomatoes could be taken out and the cannabis could be put in, and it would be fully operational. So it's really, I think there's a lot of people waiting at the moment to see what happens. And it's all relying on sort of the activism and making sure that the politicians do an inclusive industry that's going to benefit this large group of people who's already been involved in cannabis for many years, but also to make us competitive on large scale for the global market, so that we can make an actual dent in this professional market, which it is highly, highly professional. I mean, in the legal markets, there's a gentleman named Aryan from a company called Strain Hunters, and he's the first billionaire in the world.
You see the
king,
the cannabis cup,
farming.
the cannabis cup king, that dude.
The king of cannabis, that guy. Yeah.
They are on a different level.
They're on another level, and I mean that's through legal operations, through a professional industry, and I mean we're only at the beginning of that in South Africa. We're sort of at the tip of the iceberg, and it's coming quickly, So people need to. I think the perception is changing a lot, but I think the perception is going to change even faster when sort of this massive industry comes to the forefront.
Yeah. And you know what else is worth? Sorry to drag on this topic,
please go for
I feel like it's worth mentioning. It irks me that there's farmers out there in South Africa that are definitely qualified to grow cannabis. I mean, as we've said, cannabis isn't a difficult harvest crop to grow, and people grossly underestimate how in-depth it is to grow like oranges and lemons and berries, and like the amount of money and research that they pour into getting their berries just like 1% bigger and 2% sweeter is like, it's ridiculous, because at the end of the day they're getting money back from it. But anyway, so there's farmers sitting in South Africa that are fully capable of harvesting and cultivating cannabis and local, and they've got the labor and the job market's ready. But the legislation, as you said, hasn't allowed for it to move in that direction as we would have wanted it. It's going to cost you millions and millions of rands. Or there's companies in South Africa that are not South African companies. They actually companies from Lesotho, and they'll let you invest. I think it's 7 million, and then you can grow cannabis in Lesotho as a South African. But the money's not coming back really to South Africa. It's not hiring, it's the labor's not going to South African people. I mean, as much as I love the idea, I mean, it's really cool, and it's a really nice concept, but it's not something that has to happen in another country. And obviously if they're selling it here, South Africans have the capital to contribute to it, and we have the knowledge and the know-how to do it. So it should be happening on our land. The farmers are ready. Everyone's over farming, sheep and things like that. We're low on water. Cannabis is a low water consumption crop.
Yes.
And it can only help. There's some people, some farmlands that this will be their last, it could be their saving grace even. But it's unfortunate that it's just a small couple lines of legislation that are missing in order for people to be able to do this. And they could just look at what they've done overseas, copy it like they always do, and just hurry up already.
Exactly. The thing that I want to say now is what you ended with there. Hurry up already. Is that the way that I think it's what's going to happen, or what needs to happen? And please correct me if I'm wrong in technical details. Is that it has to be legalized in terms of people need to show the guys that are going to legalize it, the government, the numbers. Show the numbers and say exactly, this is what is on the table. This can change everything for the economical situation in South Africa. And which means that the pandemic and the current economical situation that we find ourselves in can be a blessing in disguise for us, okay, in terms of the cannabis industry. And when it happens, when we are legal, the first thing that needs to happen is we need to get experts that have already done it, that have already walked the road ahead, let's say from America. Best thing would be guys from, let's say, Canada and Colorado in America that can come here and say, you need to have yourself a quality process. And then after that, you need to privatize it and say every guy that needs to, that wants to sell marijuana needs to have a permit. But that's where the gray area comes in, obviously, because we live in South Africa. There's always going to be corruption in a new or existing process. But then that the public can have the trust of it, and that the government can also have the trust in the process where you are using medicine. Because like if you get antibiotics, a doctor prescribes it to you, the drug dealer, the pharmacist, he gives it to you. He just has a white coat on, and you trust it. You don't have a clue where the fuck that antibiotics comes from, what it is made of, what it's going to do to you. Yeah, they just say this is light antibiotics or there's heavy duty antibiotics. It's going to make you hallucinate. Okay, that's fine. I'll just lay in bed and hallucinate on my own. So
I must say there's less there's less regulation on giving people morphine and antibiotics from your doctor than there is for letting them letting you use a little bit of Zol in your own house. I mean, you can go to one doctor today and then go to the next doctor tomorrow and they'll give you the same thing, just Disprins or whatever, it's always the same. It's like antibiotics and gen pains. It's
in terms of for a painkiller, marijuana is way better than ibuprofen or paracetamol. By miles.
Way better. Way better. It's not going to leave you feeling off. It's non-addictive. Like it's not got a substance addictive property like ibuprofen, and I think it's the codeine that they put with those gen pains. It's a chemically addictive substance. So I mean, it's unfortunate that they're not moving at the pace. I would love to have this secret ticking time bomb of legalization that was that gets set off, and then one day we just contact the world and we say we're ready to sell. And another interesting thing, just to it's like almost like a stab in the back, but the biggest producer of medical grade cannabis in the world is England, surprisingly. Where most people don't, they think, oh, England, there's no agricultural prospects there. They can farm sheep or whatever, and cows and dairy and things like that, but you don't think that, oh, they've got agricultural large crops and things, but they're a powerhouse for exporting and refining CBD, whereas South Africa we've got all the same stuff they do. We've got enough space, land, we maybe need a bit of expertise and more land, and we've got the sun, and we just need the expertise and the permission, and we'll easily top them.
We've already got the farming expertise, so it would be more sort of like procedural, looking at certain criteria, and then an industry could very quickly take off in South Africa. I mean, even China produces medical cannabis in like very regulated facilities. And I mean, all these heavy anti-countries are producing it. Obviously shows how much money there is behind this product and how everyone is actually secretly involved. And why is it still illegal? You begin to wonder. And everyone's always said weed smokers are conspiracy theorists, and they go on about this the whole time. But it doesn't make sense why something that can make so much money remains in this state, and why everything moves forward so quickly. But we're living right now in a revolution. I mean, globally, the perception is changing, and I mean, some countries are ahead, some are a little bit behind, but soon there's going to, it's just going to continue, and there's not going to be more countries making it illegal. There's only going to be countries decriminalizing and legalizing going forward.
Yeah, something like China is a pretty interesting story, maybe for the listeners. It's they decided to not legalize, but they really wanted to capitalize on the export market and utilize their manufacturing capabilities. As we all know, they are a manufacturing and processing powerhouse. But they also, they actually they also quite au fait with agriculture with terms of rice and garlic and things like that, which most of the world's rice and garlic and teas and stuff come from. Anyway, so they decided not to legalize cannabis, but what they did instead is they granted permission to companies to run it, but they ran it like it's bizarre. It's like a prison scenario where the cameras feed directly into the local police station, and they watch the people operate these indoor cannabis grows, and there's like barbed wire fence and anyway, the point is, I mean, it's fascinating the extent that they went through to allow it, but still keep it banned. But the fact that they, at least you can see they want to do it, they're dying to do it, but they just, they want to like manage that opinion. But I commend them for at least allowing something as barbaric as that. I'm not saying we should do the same, but at least it's something.
That's insane. But it's still it's definitely a witness to the idea that the world is controlled by a select few. If you want to be conspiracy theorist in that way, because all the logical facts are pointing towards it's good for agriculture, it's good for medicinal use, it's good for the economy, and it's just being blocked from somewhere. And specifically, do you guys think that the pharmaceutical industry has a large influence on it in South Africa?
I always like to look at the example of cigarettes when asked that question, because I mean, if you look back at history, cigarette companies, when bad information about cigarettes was starting to come out, because I mean, it used to be marketed by doctors as something that's good for you. And then when it was the proper information started to come out, the cigarette company paid professionals to continue this narrative going forwards. And I mean, you still see people on TV, there's a funny video in South Africa from a few years ago of sort of a minister in the South African government, sort of in the health department, saying that sugar is better than cannabis. Sugar is better for you than cannabis. And I mean, sugar is not good for you. Everyone knows that cannabis has multiple medicinal benefits, where I don't think sort of sugar.
No, I don't think everyone does know it.
I don't think everyone knows that.
Everyone thinks it's sugar's like it's rainbow dust or whatever.
People still think that bread rolls is the staple food that you need. Just bread rolls.
It's bizarre. It's complete misinformation, and having sugar it's illegal. Like, I see sugar as like it's legalized, because I don't think it's a drug. It's full on. People are way more addicted to, Americans are way more addicted to sugar. And I mean, South Africa has got the third most obese population in the world. And but anyway, with having it legalized, and the government controls sugar, it's free market. They can, you can buy it, sell it, you can put it in your baked goods, you can do this and that, you can sell it wherever you want. But the government just controls the lands that it comes from. So you pay a tax on the amount as a sugar farmer. So you'll pay your sugar tax, and I think it's the refinery that pays it. But it's basically at the first point of production, and then it funnels down through the rest. And then everyone feels that burden. The government gets their money, and everyone else makes do, but at least, and it slows the consumption, to make it healthy, but the government gets their fair share of it. And
I think on the cannabis front, and back to the question, there's too many large industries that would be directly influenced by the legalization of cannabis. And I think sort of those companies, there are big corporations that are obviously leveraging against it, but on the same front, there's a lot of companies that are also sort of investing toward it. But I think more so in the past, it's been heavily used as a tool for multiple different things, and as the spearhead of the whole illegal war on drugs, because 90% of sort of drug users would be cannabis users or first-time cannabis users. So there's massive sort of, in America, it's the prison industry that's pushed heavily against it, and I'd imagine in South Africa it's the pharmaceutical industry, because I'm sure the agricultural industry would be keen, but sort of the biggest lose out would probably be the pharmaceutical industry. It helps you sort of wean yourself off hardcore pain pills or a lot of things that people are addicted to, and there's testimonials and lots of information online of people who have been able to completely take themselves off pills and to live a much more fulfilled life by using cannabis as a replacement.
Yeah. Fuck the pharmacies. Pharmaceuticals.
Exactly. That idea literally became clear to me when the moment that I thought about that, and I said, a pharmacist is a glorified drug dealer. That the word, the drug dealer. Because I grew up in an Afrikaans house, and like, to stay away from the drug dealers. They stand on street corners and they give you tuck and mandrakes and buttons and all that shit. And and now I just think, what is the difference between them and the pharmaceuticals? The pharmacists, they can literally they do the exact same jobs. They just take credit card.
Yeah, and they know what they're doing when they give you a Schedule 7 opioid that they know the consequences, but they don't care to explain it. And there's no alternative for most people. If you're in severe pain, I know, quite frankly, most people don't even have access to cannabis. Maybe as our generation, we have maybe a few more contacts and we have the effort and time to grow it ourselves. But a lot of people, I mean, we get asked daily if people can buy cannabis from us. They just they don't understand that we just do the cultivation. But it does go to show that how many people out there don't have access to it, and they're willing to just like approach a long shot website that does some gardening equipment basically, and sees us on YouTube, and so it's unfortunate. Like if say my folks, if they were experiencing critical pain, they wouldn't be able to access cannabis. They wouldn't know. They would maybe they'd have to ask a friend of a friend. None of their friends are smokers or take oil. So anyway, that's the thing. So they'll end up going for a painkiller.
Yeah, look, I speak openly. I'll speak openly on this podcast because it is my podcast, and my opinions will screw me over more in some way or another. That's my responsibility. So, but the moment the first time that I smoked cannabis again since like high school was the beginning of last year. But like when I mean the first time that I really partook and allowed it to do its thing. And I said, I'm going to teach myself how to do this thing, and which means I have to teach myself how to grow it, because otherwise I have to go into the underground scene where I have to find a dealer in the way that it's been stigmatized, a drug dealer, and find it, and he has to give it to me in the parking lot or whatever. And I literally just taught myself how to germinate a seed, put it in the ground, and I had to learn how to fertilize the ground. And then I found that there's guys that give you already fertilized ground, like Just Cannabis, that you buy a big old bag, and the moment that I planted it in ground like that, in soil like that, it just took off. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have had the stock that I have up until now that I can use on the daily. And on that note, it's like South Africans in general, specifically the Afrikaners, we are growers. We are like in the Lord of the Rings. We like good tilled earth. And what is the difference between that and growing a carrot that you throw into your fucking potjie kos? There's not a...
And that's such a funny point, because people in the past have always said, cannabis or weed is a gateway drug to other drugs. And my favorite joke is that it's not. it's a gateway. It's a gateway into the garden because you go and you want to grow your own cannabis, and next moment you've got a vegetable garden, and you turned your swimming pool into a natural swimming pool, and you're farming everything all around this obsession which started with you wanting to grow your own cannabis. And I see it time and time again in my daily life. It's how I got into cannabis personally as well. The first weed I ever smoked, I grew myself. It was more about the growing than the smoking originally. You know, and it's you know, it's just such a good hobby in that sense, because a lot of effort goes into it and a lot of love goes into it as well, as you've learned, you know, and it's something you can really be proud about when to get right, and it will just open up good positive
and
positive
with me,
habits.
it started with a business meeting with a mate that I saw a few years ago. And we reconnected, and he said, listen, I started growing this, ek het begin dagga in my tuin groei. Ek en my ma, him and his mom, and they've got 50 plants and they don't know what to do with it. So I'm like, yes, don't say that too loud, eh? But he said, you want some? You can come to my house tomorrow, you can pick up as much as you want. And I took some, and then obviously that changed everything after that. And then in that batch, there was a shitload of seeds. And I taught myself how to germinate them, and I think that I did a bit of more effort in terms of the how can I say, the cultivation process than he did. He just planted it and let it grow. I did some trimming.
Sometimes you get lucky though.
Yeah. But my batch is way more, like, how can I say? I don't want to say potent. It was more effective.
Connoisseur.
Yeah, it was more effective than his. And now I've got, like, I planted 15 plants the first time, only 2 survived, and that was the first batch. And now I've got out of that batch, I've got almost I think I've got 6 now that are doing very well in the winter. Normal sun, just minimal water because it's raining and it's dew every morning. And the process itself, like you said, is it's so rewarding, and it's just we are tapping into that already existing instinct of, like I said, the hobbits, we love good tilled earth.
Yeah, exactly, and that's I think that specific experience can change a lot of people's perception about what cannabis was in their mind and what it actually is. I mean, it grows naturally. We have a receptive system within our body that perfectly reacts to the compounds in the cannabis plant. So it obviously shows it's been utilized for thousands of years by humans. And I think we're deeply connected to obviously the earth and to the specific plant. It's a medicinal herb, and it's, you know, it's, like I said, it can only be seen as a positive hobby to cultivate your own, you know, because it's not just sort of planting a seed. There's so many more activities that go into it, and it builds positive reinforcement around those things.
I still want to ask you guys 2 questions, and then we can go. We're almost on an hour now. But like the one thing that I noticed was that cannabis used to be an essential ingredient to the way that society used to operate, specifically hemp. They use it for building materials, for textiles. And then cannabis was, before paracetamol and ibuprofen existed, cannabis was the painkiller. Before morphine even, it was the painkiller. And it was almost, some say it was because of Nixon, that was a construction mogul in America that really forced it to become a Schedule 1 drug. And then it just basically blew over to the rest of the world. But see, there must be a way, or we have to, like, focus on that side of the education to say that it's been a part of the human condition for most of our history, and we need to bring it back. We have to remember where we come from.
It's been used by humans for thousands of years, and it's only been illegal for the last 100 years. And it's actually a very interesting whole process, because it was it's the first signs of cannabis was sort of in the East, and it made sort of a 360-degree all around the world, where it's been growing now naturally for thousands of years and has evolved in those different climates to be sort of different kinds of plants, all with the same sort of genetic lineage. But then in America, where it sort of first started to be stigmatized and made illegal, there was exactly like you said, there was Nixon who sort of started it, but before him, I think it was Ronald Reagan who really spearheaded, fueled by the cotton industry as well. There was these two competing industries, cotton and hemp, and they were sort of right at the forefront of each other. Hemp was proving to be more beneficial, and Henry Ford actually made his first prototype of the Ford by using hemp plastic, which is something you can derive from the hemp plant. So it shows how widely used it was. The dollar bill at one point was also printed on hemp, but then due to multiple different reasons, race being one of them, it was a lot of the time brought in from Mexico, and there was multiple different factors, these industries that were against it, and all of that alongside the war on drugs. It was kind of used as the spearhead on the war of drugs that sort of took over the whole world. So the cannabis and hemp, from a widely used product in the sort of 20s, became one of the most demonized things, because it was sort of used as the main focus point of this massive marketing campaign, which billions of dollars was pumped into, and that was sort of the war on drugs. And that was funded a lot by, like I said, the cotton industry back in the early days, which is very interesting. And it just shows how, if it didn't have to go that way. It was just one industry obviously made some better marketing decisions than another, and it caused this negative effect on something that could have otherwise been beneficial and more widely used. I mean, hemp plastic is biodegradable where plastic isn't, and we're dealing now with massive pollution issues worldwide. And did it have to be like that if an alternative wasn't made illegal?
I wish it
so that's it's sort of I actually, when I first got into cannabis, I was very into sort of the backstory as to why, because obviously I came from a very conservative household myself, and I had to go on a marketing campaign of my own to convince my parent. I researched the internet. I'd obviously grown this plant, and I was like, the information doesn't seem, there's information out there that goes against the information that I've been told. Weed is evil, it's the devil's lettuce. That's how I was raised, and then sort of got heavy into this topic through growing it, not even smoking it, and I began to realize, all of this information behind it, and actually this very interesting tale of propaganda that had gone behind it, and it was used because it was so widely used, so to get a whole industry to get a whole campaign going, rather go for the most widely used item, even if it's maybe the least harmful of the lot.
No, Dean, you gave me goosebumps there, because that's everything the way that I would like to articulate it in a conversation when I talk about cannabis, and because I really am passionate about it at the moment, and I think that it can, not just the use of cannabis, but just the overall, the cultivation, the job creation, the agriculture, everything that it will bring. Because it's if you're religious at all, I believe that it comes directly from the God that that created everything, and I think that it can definitely change a lot of stuff in South Africa specifically. It has the same effect as food. I found that racial barriers are very, very quickly narrowed when you eat together at the same table. Afrikaners, we like to braai. Obviously, all white people like to braai. Black people also like to braai, but when we do it together, it's even better. Alcohol has the same effect sometimes. And the last question that I always ask my guests is, what is your, not perfect South Africa, but what would you like to have, would like to happen in South Africa for it to be the perfect human condition, if I can say it in English like that?
Sort of like a better place. I mean, probably, I mean, in terms of the context of our works and and what we do. I mean, obviously, cannabis legalization will have an impact on the smaller communities, rural communities that rely on, sustainable farming. They will get impacted heavily, but just in general, I mean, South Africa needs to pick up its act and sort of get to a point where these legislations can be made. It can't, it needs to be opened up to the public to help make these decisions. They need to consult the people in the industry to make the rules. And hopefully if they do those things, we can get it done quicker, we can get to market sooner, and we can make, everyone can sort of benefit a lot from it. I don't know, Dean, maybe your thoughts on our future South Africa.
I'd like exactly the same. There's, like I said earlier when we were talking, this is sort of my main passion in life. It has been for many years, for the past 10 years of my life. And it, at one point, nearly took me out of South Africa. If circumstance had been different in my life and I hadn't, certain things hadn't happened, I would have gone to America to pursue this passion. And I think in the specific South African landscape, in the sort of more conservative, I grew up in sort of a half Afrikaans, half English family. So conservative English on the one side, conservative Afrikaans on the other side. And it was completely stigmatized. But in the Black culture, it's been something that's been, especially like in the Transkei and in the Eastern Cape, it's something that has been sort of cultivated very widely for hundreds of years. So I'd like to see an inclusive industry. And I mean, you said food is something that brings people together, but when you whip out a joint, you have, there's no more boundaries. Everyone comes together around a good joint. So I just want to see the stigma removed and to prove, and that's why we put so much effort into it, that, cannabis doesn't make you a lazy person that sits on the couch and watches TV all day. That might be other factors completely. I'd like to see the stigma to be changed to show that it's something that can be used with very little negative health effects, and that can be used functionally and has multiple benefits in basically every field we operate in South Africa. And when that day comes, which it will come soon, I think a lot of people are going to be very, very surprised that they didn't get onto the train a little bit earlier.
Amen. Namaste. God bless, and everything else that follows to that. Well, thank you so much, guys. We're just over an hour now, and thank you so much for making time in really educating us and sharing your story. And I really wish you guys all the best, and keep on having that good fight. Don't go to America. They've got their own guys. We need expertise such as yours on this side, and I really hope that the next time that we talk, that we are further down the road and we are closer to legalization, that everyone can use it. And I would be privileged one day to smoke with you guys and even go deeper down this rabbit hole.
Hopefully it'll be from a dispensary.
Yes. Exactly. So I'm gonna say cheers to you guys. I'm just gonna press pause on my side, and then we can just debrief afterwards. So thank you so much, guys.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for having us. It was really great.
Dankie dat jy die tyd uit jou dag geneem het om na hierdie episode te luister. Ek hoop dit het jou gehelp om minder bekommerd te wees oor die realiteit van hoe moeilik hierdie lewe partykeer kan wees. As jy van hierdie episode gehou het, wees so gaaf en gaan gee vir ons 'n goeie rating op die podcast platform waarop jy luister. Vertel asseblief ook jou vriende en familie van ons en maak seker dat hulle ook na hierdie podcast begin luister. Like en share asseblief al ons content op Instagram en Facebook en stuur gerus vir ons 'n direkte boodskap of e-pos aangaande enige navrae, nuwe onderwerpe of potensiële gaste vir 'n episode. Tot volgende keer wat ons saam inprop en voorspoed met jou reis tot verstandelike onafhanklikheid. Totsiens. met 'n nota van vrywaring. Die opinies van die Tafelmaniere Podcast se gasheer is sy opinies. Geen van die opinies is die reine waarheid nie en veralgemening is hierso baie algemeen. Kopiereg Tafelmaniere Podcast 2019.